In this lecture, we'll start with the Bitcoin case study. In the previous lecture, we covered the module 1, that is from the first lecture to the 8th lecture. And this is the 9th lecture going on. In this lecture, we'll see the Bitcoin case study. So we'll go for revision of the module 1 for some time. Then we'll move on to the Bitcoin case study. Just we'll go for the recap of the previous lectures, that is blockchain foundations. In order to understand what is blockchain, one must know the three concepts. The first one is networking concepts, in which we have seen the centralized networks, in which all the computers are connected to a server, and for any work, each and every client has to request to the server, and server will process the request and will send the response back. And decentralized network, in the decentralized network, individual computers will do its own task, but in coordination with other computers, this kind of decentralization will take place. Distributed networks are also in which the nodes are independent of each other and they won't depend on any other network, but all the computers are connected in a distributed fashion, that is like a mesh network. The distributed network we will be having, and if any link fails, then we can achieve that target node via another path. This is what we call a distributed network. In distributed networks especially, we'll achieve the fault tolerance and reliability, because even a link fails, even though a path failed, then we can reach the target in another path. And peer-to-peer networks. Here, peer-to-peer networks is nothing but these networks are like simple like distributed networks and like a kind of decentralization only, but in which any computer can join the network at any time and can communicate with the other networks, and will wait for the other peers who are available in the network and can communicate with them. So the best example of the peer-to-peer network we have seen BitTorrent protocol, and also the IPFS platform. The next module that one must know is cryptography, because blockchain use the best practices of cryptography. Especially many of the blockchains will use blockchain will use the public key cryptography. And in this, in general in cryptography, there are two categories: symmetric key cryptography and asymmetric key cryptography. Symmetric key is nothing but we are going to use the same key for both encryption and decryption. With this, we can achieve the properties of cryptography such as confidentiality and authentication. But there are two more properties to be satisfied such as integrity and non-repudiation. Using symmetric key cryptography, we can achieve the confidentiality and authentication, because we can perform the encryption and also key is available, but we cannot achieve the key management and non-repudiation. That is the reason it is very, very essential to move on to the asymmetric cryptography. Asymmetric key cryptography or public key cryptography are one and the same. Usually the blockchain frameworks will use the asymmetric key cryptography, in which for the computer networks, in your graduate studies, you might have studied the RSA algorithm as the best public key cryptography algorithm. But here RSA will not be used because of some constraints like the prime factoring, and prime factoring can be easily calculated using the quantum computing. So that is the reason RSA is not that much preferable. So that is the reason the blockchain frameworks will use the elliptic curve cryptography as the public key algorithm. Elliptic curve cryptography has a facility that with small key size, it can achieve the greater security. That means whatever the security that you can achieve using 2048-bit RSA algorithm, the same security strength, you can achieve using 256-bit key of elliptic curve cryptography. So that is the reason we have seen what is the elliptic curve and how these elliptic curves are defined, and what are the various operations on elliptic curve, such as point addition, point doubling, and what are the standard elliptic curves are there. Who is going to decide those standard elliptic curves, such as standards group in elliptic curve cryptography. I have given you the website also. There they have defined the standard elliptic curves like P192 curve, which is used by NSA, and specification 256K1 elliptic curve used by the Bitcoin. I have shown you the what are the curves and what are their equation, what is the base point, and the prime numbers are taken by those curves. All these things we have seen in the last lectures. So encryption, decryption, how to perform the encryption and decryption using elliptic curve cryptography, and also how to generate the digital signatures using ECC, that is elliptic curve cryptography, which is also called as ECDSA, elliptic curve digital signature algorithm, are also explained. So in the networking part, blockchain is a distributed and a decentralized network. The nodes will communicate in the peer-to-peer fashion. While coming to the cryptography part, the blockchain frameworks will use the elliptic curve cryptography as its base public key algorithm, in which they can choose a standard elliptic curve and can implement the encryption, decryption, and digital signatures. As part of the hashing is especially used for the integrity purpose, in which we have seen various cryptographic hash algorithms ranging from MD2 to SHA-256. So among all those cryptographic hash algorithms, we have found that SHA-256 is popularly used by various blockchains. Next one is data structures, like chaining, how one block can be chained with the other block or linked with other block. This has been seen. Then Merkle tree is also said to be the hash tree. Once you understand the cryptographic hashing, using this cryptographic hashing, you can build the tree. This is called Merkle tree. So this Merkle tree we'll discuss in detail when we discuss the Bitcoin case study and Bitcoin block creation. And also we have seen the distributed ledger technology, because blockchain technology itself is a distributed ledger technology with the properties such as integrity, finality, provenance, and trust. These kind of things can be added with the distributed ledger technology. And the databases. So usually it is a kind of distributed ledger technology is a kind of database in which all the transactions are recorded in a distributed ledger, and every participating node will be having their own record. So these three are the foundations for any blockchain framework. So that is the reason we have gone through these concepts in the module 1. So to summarize, blockchain is a decentralized, distributed, and peer-to-peer network. Blockchain frameworks uses public key algorithm or public key cryptography. Example, elliptic curve cryptography. SHA-256, simple hash algorithm, 256-bit, is majorly used by many blockchain platforms. Merkle tree is a hash tree which is formed via SHA-256 or maybe any other cryptographic hash function. But in our blockchain frameworks, we use SHA-256 as the algorithm to generate the cryptographic hash values. Using those hash values, this tree will be built. Merkle tree is used in creating blocks. And while coming to the data structure, when these blocks are arranged in a linear fashion, like a chain, blocks are only appended to the chain. That means blocks cannot be included in the middle of the chain. It can be added only at the end of the chain. And you recap the example that we have discussed in the previous lectures. Here Ramu and Gopal are the two people. Ramu has sent ₹1,000 to Gopal. Ramu has written a ledger. Ledger is nothing but entry into a register. Ramu a business person, and he has sent ₹1,000 to Gopal, or he has given ₹1,000 to Gopal. Now assume that this is a physical currency. Assume that this is the physical currency, that amount has been given to Gopal, and Ramu has written in his ledger that to Gopal ₹1,000. That means I have given Gopal ₹1,000. This is Ramu's ledger. So whenever this amount has been given to Gopal, Gopal should also write in his own ledger, from Ramu I have received 1000 rupees. Now assume that this is the proper way of writing the ledger in their business registers. But what happened, Ramu is somewhat mischievous, and what he did is he made an entry that to Gopal rupees 1500. That means he has given only 1000 rupees, but Gopal he has written in the register that to Gopal 1500 rupees. That means he has written rupees 500 extra. Now Gopal is not that much innocent. What he did is, from Ramu rupees 500. That means he has taken 1000 rupees, but he entered only 500 as the amount in the register. So that means Ramu and Gopal has both gone for a fraud. If an auditor, every year, if you want to check, usually he will come and will check in the register of the Ramu, and will see whether how much is the income and how much is the expenditure, and whether the balance sheet is tallied or not. This will be done at the Ramu side. While coming to the Gopal, the same auditor may go here, and they won't. That auditor may not take the reference of this Ramu's ledger, but he will pick up only the Gopal's ledger and will go for what is the income and what is the expenditure, and will go for balance sheet, and then decides that whether Gopal has achieved the profit or loss, or Ramu achieved the profit or loss. This is only the thing that that auditor can do, because these ledgers are individual and independent of each other. So that is the reason combining these two ledgers and verification for any auditor is very difficult. But if there exists a centralized authority, these two transactions will be recorded in the centralized authority, maybe a bank server or any other thing, or maybe any other central servers, so that auditor may verify that central server. It is sufficient for deciding who has done the fraud. But because of the individuality, this is not possible by the auditor. So this is the major problem actually in any decentralized network or decentralized system. So in centralized system like bank transactions or bank servers, so anyone can know that who has sent how much amount to whom, and how much amount he received from whom. These kind of concepts can be easily identified because they can go through the auditing of the bank server. But the distributed this blockchain is as we have seen just now, the blockchain is distributed, decentralized, and the nodes will communicate in the peer-to-peer fashion. So here the blockchain is meant for avoiding the centralized systems. So we have seen with the centralized system, this fraud can be easily identified. But with the decentralized system, how we are going to identify this fraud? This is a very, very, very difficult task. So the same is also true if the same currency is of a type cryptocurrency or maybe a digital currency. Here we are talking about the physical currency. Assume that this is of a digital currency, and the same digital currency has sent from Ramu to Gopal and was recorded in the ledger, in the individual ledger. Then how this particular amount or this transaction is valid or not will be verified. It's a very, very difficult task. So now what is happening in this decentralized system is we are going to introduce witnesses to verify whether Ramu has really sent rupees 1000 to Gopal or not. So for that, the Ramu to Gopal rupees 1000 transaction will be this copy of this transaction will be sent to some witnesses, or we also call in the blockchain terminology called miners. So these miners will receive the copy of this transaction. This is a very simple transaction indication like Ramu to Gopal rupees 1000. So for this actually a timestamp will be added at what time this transaction is generated, and remaining all metadata which is supporting this transaction will be generated, and that copy will be sent to the verifier called Ishwar and Paras and Radha, these are the three witnesses, or we can say these are the stakeholders in this network. Okay, in the business network. So this transaction will be sent to Ishwar, Paras, and Radha for verification. Now this particular transaction has to be verified. So in order to do this verification, first of all, they have to decide whether this transaction was generated by Ramu or not. Okay, this transaction was generated by Ramu or not. That means they have to check the identity of Ramu and whether Ramu has really sent to Gopal or not. That means they have to check for the identity of the Gopal. Okay, and they have to verify this transaction amount. That means how much Ramu actually is having in his account and how much he was sent. It is just like if you go to an ATM and you have only 5,000 rupees in your bank account. Now if you are trying to withdraw rupees 6,000, then ATM cannot give you, and it will say that a transaction denied or transaction failed. But this is a digital currency and it is working in the decentralized environment. Ramu can simply create a digital currency, like he can simply mention, okay, I am sending 1,000 rupees to Gopal, even though Ramu is having only 800 rupees in his account. So that means how much actually the Ramu is having in his account must be verified first. So before that, first Ramu's identity must be verified. Next, what is the balance the Ramu is having already should be verified. Next, whether Gopal's identity is verified, and Ramu has sent the Gopal this particular transaction, transaction and amount should be verified, and this amount is greater than or less than the base amount having the Ramu is having should be verified. And one more thing we are supposed to verify is, after depositing into the Gopal's account, whether what is the previous balance of Gopal, and how much is the updated, what is the updated amount, that also to be verified. So these many verification has to be done. And actually after verification, they will come to a agreement that Ishwar, Paras, and Radha will come to an agreement that okay, the transaction generated by Ramu is a valid transaction, and this transaction is a genuine transaction, so that this can be acceptable. So this kind of agreement they will reach. So this agreement is said to be the consensus. So Ishwar, Paras, and Radha must reach to a consensus on the transaction generated, so that this transaction will become a valid transaction, and such all valid transactions over a period of time will be included into a data structure called block, and such blocks will be added to the main architecture which is called blockchain in a linear fashion. So this is the way of adding the things to the blockchain. So these are the fundamentals with which the verification will be done, and the verified transactions will be added to the block, and the over a period of time, whatever the transactions added to the block will be added to the blockchain. And in later stage, if anyone requests the Gopal rupees 1,000, because 1,000 is already received from Ramu, but Gopal should not say that I don't have this amount, because already he has received rupees 1,000 from Gopal. And if anyone asks the Ramu that have you sent rupees 1,000 to Gopal, and Ramu should not be in a position to deny that I have not sent the rupees 1,000 to Gopal. So that means this strict verification must be done at the including of this transaction into the block itself. So for this, one more suitable cryptographic operation that need to be performed is called non-repudiation property. That means sender should not deny that he has not sent any message in future. So this is what the non-repudiation property. this will be achieved with the help of digital signature. That means whenever Ramu is sending Gopal ₹1000, at the time Ramu will generate a digital signature and will attach to this transaction, so that Ishwar, Paras and Radha can take the digital signature and can verify. So the digital signature will be generated like this. This entire transaction will be hashed. That means it will be sent on to the cryptographic hash function, so that the hash value they will get, that hash value will be encrypted using the private key of Ramu, and that particular message, that is the transaction, and the private key, that is encrypted form of the hash value, will be sent out, so that anyone who is having the public key of Ramu can easily verify whether this transaction was generated by Ramu or not. This is what the thing called digital signature verification. So encryption will be done using the public key, and decryption will be done using the private key in general. But in case of digital signature, encrypting of the hash value will be done using the private key, and verification will be done using the public key. So here these are the four things that need to be addressed by in this particular scenario. So transaction verification, that is identity and key verification. So Paras, Radha and Ishwar has to verify the identity of Ramu and also the key of Ramu, because Ramu will be supplied with public and private keys, so they have to verify the key also. Transaction validation, whether this transaction is actually generated by Ramu or not, because how it will be verified, it is verified via signatures, that is the digital signature added to this transaction. Next, reaching to the consensus, that is after verification, if Paras feel that okay, this transaction is a valid one, and Radha feels that this is a transaction is valid one, and Ishwar feels this is a transaction a valid transaction, then they will reach to an agreement. They will reach to an agreement. This particular agreement is called consensus. So for this, various consensus protocols are available, and depending upon the blockchain framework, they use different consensus protocols, such as proof of work, proof of stake, proof of elapsed time, proof of authority, practical Byzantine fault tolerant, Paxos, Raft. These are the various consensus protocols available. And we have seen in the last lecture that Bitcoin uses the proof of work, the Ethereum also uses the proof of work, and IBM Hyperledger uses the practical Byzantine fault tolerance algorithm. So these are the various blockchain frameworks and what the consensus protocol they are using. These are the concepts we have seen in the last lecture. And while coming to the creating immutable ledger, the block creation. So block creation means over a period of time, like for example 10 minutes or 20 minutes, how many transactions are verified, all those transactions will be grouped into a data structure called block. That is what they call block creation. So these are the four activities need to be done in the decentralized environment and a peer-to-peer communication when there is no centralized authorities available. The same is doing by the blockchain also. So for the transaction verification and transaction validation, one must have the idea of cryptography. That is, in the blockchain foundation we have seen the cryptography is the one foundation that you must learn. Next, reaching to the consensus protocols must be learned. Next, creating immutable ledger. For this, data structure and block creation must be learned. And how these networks will be communicated, how these nodes will be communicated. That is, Ishwar's computer, Radha computer, Paras computer, Ramu and Gopal computer is interacted in a peer-to-peer fashion, in a decentralized way, in a peer-to-peer fashion, and the entire network is a distributed network. So I hope by this time you come to know the crux of the blockchain and what are the various modules that you must be aware of to understand the blockchain frameworks. So what is the blockchain and why does it matter? So a blockchain is a historical record of transactions, much like a database only, but here blocks were arranged in a chain fashion like pages in a book. So each page in a book contains the text, the story, and each page has information about itself, like title of the book, chapter title, page number, etc. And if you want to add any block to the blockchain, it must be appended only at the end of the chain. It cannot be added in the middle of the chain. Similarly, in a blockchain, each block has two parts. One is header part, another is content part. So every block consisting of block header and block content. A header which contains the data about the block, example, technical information, a reference to the previous block, and a digital fingerprint, also known as hash, of the data contained in the block. The contents of the block consisting of, there is second part of the block consisting of the information about the transactions. So header consisting of the metadata about the block. Metadata means data about the data. That means how many transactions you are including in this, what is the timestamp of the generating of the block, what is the previous hash block, this previous hash of the block, hash of the previous block. So these kind of things will be available in the header part, and in the content part actual information will be available. So these are the two parts in the block. So blockchain is a distributed ledger that can contain financial or non-financial transactions. If financial transactions are there, then it may be a cryptocurrency. Non-financial are there, it may be business blockchain. Blockchain is replicated across a number of systems in a near time or a peer-to-peer network. For example, if a block is created, then the blockchain will be there. If it is added to the blockchain, that copy will be replicated to Ramu, Ishwar, Radha, Paras, Gopal, whoever connected to that network. To all those members, to all those users in the network, the copy will be sent. That is the reason it is to be replicated. It is replicated or distributed across a number of systems in the near real time over a peer-to-peer network. Every participant owns the same copy of the ledger and gets updated when any transaction is added. That means at any time, if you look at the users in the network, the blockchain network will be having the same copy of the ledger. If any new transaction is generated and new block is created, that automatically that block will be updated to the blockchain at the user end. Every participant help determine the intrinsic immutability of all existing records. Uses cryptography and digital signature to prove identity, authenticity, and enforce read or write access. This is also used by created by the cryptographic hash functions, digital signatures, and asymmetric cryptography. And blockchain has mechanism to make it hard to change historical record, or at least make it easy to detect when someone is trying to change it. So this is what the description of the blockchain, and so this is a toy demonstration of the blockchain. For example, this is the first block to be created. The first block to be created is said to be the Genesis block. The first block in any blockchain is said to be Genesis block. And here a random number will be generated by default. And here we will add the data like A has sent B rupees 1000 and B has sent C rupees 1000, 100 rupees. Then C has sent D 1500 rupees. Now look at, when you are adding the data, automatically this entire data is going to be added or sent to the SHA-256 algorithm, and here a hash value will be generated. This hash value is around 256 bit length, because you are using 256 bit algorithm. So you look at hash, this is the SH256 hash value. If you add data, so 22DD or 22DE, so this is the hash code will be generated. So this hash code will change if you make any changes in the transactions. For example, from 1500 to 150 I made. You observe 222DE like that. This code is there. If I make the change 0, I have removed 0. So it became from 222DE to E40BC. That means this hash value was changed. That means there is a modification made in this data. With this what will happen if anyone want to try to manipulate it, like how Ramu has manipulated he has sent only 1500 rupees to Gopal, like in this case. So he has written, instead of sending, he has sent only 1000 rupees, but here he has written 1500 rupees. But Gopal has received 1000 rupees, but he has written 500 rupees. So this is a fraud actually. So but if this kind of changes were happened, and if any slight changes happened in the transaction entry, then the corresponding hash value was changed, then it is very easy to recognize is any modification has been made in the transaction or not. Because whenever you generate this transaction, automatically hash value will also be generated. In future, if anyone try to change this transaction, this hash value will also be disturbed. If this hash value disturbed, the entire block will be disturbed. So that is the reason this is the hash value generated. Now previous hash block, because this is the first block, we don't have the previous block, so previous hash block is 000. Now I am going for mine. That means I want to create this block. So assume that this block was created. So the block is creating. Yeah, block is created. See, please remember, this is a toy simulation. It's a simulation. It's only toy example. It's not real blockchain. Okay. So block is created. After creating of the block, I'm going to write the second thing, and in which I'm writing 15,000 here. Now second block I'm going to mine. So second block is going to be created. Now this is the hash of the previous block 00040 D6ED, and the same previous hash block, previous hash will be added to the current block. That is, previous block hash will be added into the current block, and by adding this, the block of the hash of the entire block will be created, and this is the hash of the entire block. Now you look at these two blocks were mined. Now I will try to make a modification in this, like how Ramu did and how Gopal did. I want to make modification from B to C. Instead of 100, I will write only 10 rupees was sent. So whenever I remove 0 from this, you look at this first block and second block turned into pink. That means there is a disturbance in the hash value, and since this hash value was used by the second block, so automatically the second block hash value is also disturbed. Okay, so that is the reason no one will make will go for changing of this values, because if anything was changed, even a small thing was changed in the block, then the subsequent blocks will get reflected. So that is the reason, in this way, the blockchain will achieve the trust, integrity, immutability, finality, and provenance. These are the concepts that will be achieved in the Bitcoin. Bitcoin, not only Bitcoin, in blockchain also. I hope by this time you come to know how the blockchain works. Okay. Oh. So the block structure, the block consisting of two parts like this. One is block header, second one is block body. Block header consisting of the metadata, block body consisting of the information like the transaction information. So the block header consisting of block version indicates which set of block validation rules to follow, parent block hash, Merkle tree root hash, timestamp, at what time it was generated, n bits current hashing target in compact form, nonce, a random number of 4-byte field, which is usually start with 0 and increases for every hash value. Block body consisting of transaction counter and transactions. So this is a simple block structure looks like. So this is the block header, block version, parent block hash, Merkle tree root, timestamp. These are the things will be available. And here actual data will be there in the block body. So let us see. Let will start with the Bitcoin case study. By having understood that what is blockchain and how the blocks created, and what is the need of how you can maintain the trust and integrity even after eliminating the centralized platform that we have seen in the introduction to the blockchain. So Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency. Bitcoin is not blockchain. Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency that works on top of the blockchain. That means Bitcoin is just like your email, and blockchain is like internet. Without internet, email will not work. Like that, Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency that works on top of the blockchain. Without blockchain, this cryptocurrency will not work. So blockchain is the first, Bitcoin blockchain is first proposed in 2008 and implemented in 2009 by Satoshi Nakamoto. So Satoshi Nakamoto, no one knows who is this person, and some people will say that these are the group of people who have created it like that, but still till today no one knows who is Satoshi Nakamoto. Just he was given a white paper to the cryptography conference, and in that the white paper is Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. That paper was become famous, and then in 2009 they started this Bitcoin platform. So blockchain is the core mechanism for this Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the first decentralized digital currency, as it does not rely on the central government authority. So no centralized trusted server will be available. It is completely peer-to-peer and decentralized digital currency. This is the first currency was introduced in 2009 when there is a huge disaster in the financial sector. So that is the resistant time that you may be aware of. In 2009, many employees lost their job, especially in the software sector. So that is because of the trust over many financial institutions, and the financial institutions are unable to keep up their trust, and they started decreasing their shares, and the entire share market is getting down at the time. So that is the time this Bitcoin came into the picture and changed the total paradigm of financial transactions and completely moved from the centralized system to the decentralized system. So Bitcoin are a secure asset. That means these are the only how many Bitcoins that can be generated means it's actually a limited number of Bitcoins will be there. It is created through a digital mining process, and a finite number of Bitcoins are available. There are only 21 million Bitcoins available. So with this 21 million Bitcoins only, the entire transactions will go on. And which is these 21 million Bitcoins are only mined and unmined. So that means which are available with the users and which are not available with the users. That is in the reserve. All put together, only 21 million are there. Is Bitcoin a real currency? So currency means what? A store of value, medium of exchange, and a unit of account. So the economists say that Bitcoin is not a currency and also not a to be currency, because this is not accepted by many of the countries across the world. Many of the European countries have accepted Bitcoin as the legal tender in their country, but India has not accepted Bitcoin as the legal tender. but one can do the Bitcoin mining or Bitcoin exchange. These kind of things can be done, but Bitcoin cannot be considered as a legal tender. Only Indian rupees as a legal tender you can do it in the India. Is there any sort of intrinsic values in the Bitcoin? Usually this Bitcoin value, corresponding value will vary over a period of time. So we'll see these details when we go through the values related to the Bitcoin. Bitcoin is still an inherently volatile asset. Can it be spent, traded and collected, traded and spent? Yes, you can do it. But the country has to, the related country or the region has to accept the Bitcoin as the legal tender. As just now I told you, the India don't have the facility of accepting the Bitcoin as a legal tender. So as digital currencies evolve, so too does the nature of money, banking and worldwide financial transactions. These use cases are not the forefront of blockchain evaluation, but the forefront of the blockchain evaluation is especially to achieve the trust, finality, immutability, provenance in a distributed and decentralized environment. Let's look at the Bitcoin currency and payment systems. So here, person A, he may be having some dollars. What he can do is he can send this amount to the Bitcoin money exchanger. So that money exchanger, what he will do is he will take his commission, and this amount will be converted into the Bitcoin digital currency. And this digital currency will be handed over to the person A. Okay. And what this person A will do is he want to send this Bitcoin to the person B. So he will send this Bitcoin to the person B. So it's just like Ramu is sending Gopal so and so Bitcoin. So this transaction information will be sent to all the users in the Bitcoin network. So the miners who are like Radha, Ishwar and Paras, okay, will verify the transaction, and if you find that this is a valid transaction, then they will include in the block. Otherwise, they will reject the transaction. So in order to achieve the consensus, they will be given a task to complete. Or we can say that the task is also called as work to complete. So they have to complete the work and submit the result. This procedure is said to be the proof of work procedure, which is a consensus protocol to be run in the Bitcoin. Now, once this person B receives the Bitcoin cannot be directly used if it is not a legal tender. Then it has to be sent to the Bitcoin money exchanger. Again, here the money exchanger will take some commission, and it will be converted into the local currency, and that local currency may be sent to the bank or may be directly given to the person B. But in many countries, this amount has to be sent to the bank. Like in India, you cannot get the total cash like this. It must be sent to the corresponding bank, and from the bank only the person has to receive. But some money exchangers, they may give the cash. This kind of mechanism also available. That actually I come to know from some other people. So this is actually, it is an illegal activity actually. So it will be actually sent to the bank. Then from bank, this person B will be. That means here it's completely virtual currency. It's not a straightforward currency. It's a completely virtual currency. Now, if you want to convert your amount to Bitcoin, how much amount do you require to convert into Bitcoin? So currently, as on today, one Bitcoin value is 32,46,572 rupees. So if you have this much amount with you, then you will get one Bitcoin. Okay. So one Bitcoin in Indian rupees, this much. So if this much amount is there with you, then you can get one Bitcoin. So in 2017, I attended one one cryptography workshop. So the director of Indian Statistical Institute, retired director, he has written one article in the Economic Times in 2017 June by Atul Viswas and Bimal Roy. It is a very worth to read. Bitcoin, the new Hawala. After demonetization in November 2016, how the money went out of the country is trying to come into the country in the form of Bitcoins. So this is an article. He has shown the statistics like what is the Bitcoin exchange value in November 2016 and how it was drastically increased. It was shown that in 2016 November, it is around $800 per one Bitcoin, and slowly it was increased to $1,000 per Bitcoin, and slowly it went up to 10 in the middle of March 2017. It went up to $6,000 per one Bitcoin, and now it is heated more than $15,000, $20,000 per Bitcoin. So that is this trend has been shown on that day. So this was projected on the, at the time in 2017, and in 2018 February, if you remember, then finance minister of Union of India, Mr. Arun Jaitley, he announced that Bitcoin is not a legal tender in India. If you look at the trend in March, that is February, the parliament sessions of budget was going on. In that he announced in March, if you look at there's a steep crash in the Bitcoin exchange. So that means if it becomes a legal tender in India, entire black money will come into the India as a white money. But it was rejected. Till now it is rejected because the amount still will come into the country. So this is a worth to read, this article. And I come to know recently that RBI is trying to introduce a cryptocurrency, especially to operate in India. So, but Bitcoin is not a legal tender in India. However, you can do Bitcoin exchange and Bitcoin mining. This kind of things you can do, but it's not a legal tender in India. So with this, I will conclude this lecture. In the next lecture, we'll see some more concepts related to the Bitcoin, especially like mining and incentives, and how the miners will receive the incentives, this kind of things in the next lecture.